Have you ever been invisible in your own family? That's how I felt standing in the law office conference room, watching my father and sister discuss mom's estate like I wasn't even there. Emma will inherit the house, obviously. Stella can have mom's art supplies or something, Dad said, not even looking at me. Emma laughed, actually laughed, at the idea of me getting art supplies as an inheritance. My name is Stella Chen, I'm 30 years old, and I was about to watch my family discover that the daughter they'd dismissed for years was actually worth more than both of them combined. The conference room at Richardson & Associates felt suffocating that Tuesday morning in Portland. Rain streaked down the floor-to-ceiling windows as my father, Richard Chen, sat at the head of the table in his navy suit, looking every bit the successful real estate developer he'd spent 40 years becoming. Emma, my older sister, sat to his right in her black theory blazer, hair pulled back in that severe bun that screamed, "I'm too important for nonsense." And then there was me, in my vintage floral dress and cardigan, clutching a folder nobody had bothered to ask about. I'd always been the artistic one, the dreamer, the daughter who wasted her potential by choosing design school over business school. For 8 years since graduating, I'd worked as a freelance graphic designer. In my family's eyes, this made me a failure. "Mr. Richardson," my father said, adjusting his expensive watch. "Let's expedite this. My wife didn't have significant assets beyond the house and personal effects. This should be straightforward." Mr. Richardson, a silver-haired man in his 60s, gave my father a look I couldn't quite read. "Actually, Mr. Chen, Margaret's estate is considerably more complex than you might expect." Emma leaned forward, her diamond ring catching the light. "What do you mean, complex? Mom didn't work. She just did her art thing." That phrase made my stomach twist. As if Mom's passion were somehow less legitimate than Emma's marketing director position or Dad's property developments. I stayed silent, the way I'd learned to do over 3 decades of family dinners where my accomplishments earned polite nods while Emma's bonuses got standing ovations. "Before we begin," Mr. Richardson said, opening his portfolio, "Margaret had very specific instructions about how this reading should proceed. She requested I read the will without interruption and present certain documents at specific moments." "Documents?" Dad frowned. "What documents?" Mr. Richardson began reading. "I, Margaret Sophia Chen, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament, executed on the 15th day of March, 2024. That date made my chest tighten. March 15th, 2 weeks after Mom and I had celebrated the gallery's 6th anniversary with champagne in her studio. She'd seemed tired that day, more fragile than usual. Now I understood. She'd known something was wrong. She'd known she needed to protect what we'd built together. To my husband Richard, Mr. Richardson continued, I leave our family home at 2847 Westview Heights, along with all furnishings and personal effects contained therein." Dad nodded, satisfied. The house was worth maybe $800,000, exactly what he'd expected. "To my daughter Emma Catherine Chen, I leave my personal jewelry collection, including the pearl necklace given to me by my mother, the diamond earrings Richard gifted me on our 20th anniversary, and all other pieces currently stored in the master bedroom safe." Emma smiled, glancing at me with barely concealed triumph. Mom's jewelry was probably worth $60,000 or $70,000. I could already hear her calculating the resale value. "And to my daughter Stella Lynn Chen," Mr. Richardson paused, and I swear the corners of his mouth twitched upward, "I leave everything else." The silence lasted maybe 3 seconds, but it felt like an hour. "Everything else?" Emma's voice was sharp. "What else is there? Art supplies?" That's when Mr. Richardson pulled out the first folder. Margaret Chen was a co-founder and 50% owner of the Meridian Gallery in the Pearl District. The business was established in 2018 as an equal partnership between Margaret and Stella Chen. The gallery specializes in contemporary Pacific Northwest artists and has become one of the region's most respected art venues. I watched my father's face change colors: confusion, disbelief, red-faced anger. "That's impossible," he said flatly. "Margaret never mentioned any gallery. She painted in her home studio. That's all. Actually, Mr. Chen, your wife was quite involved in the gallery's operations until her health declined last year." She and Stella worked together every Wednesday and Friday for 6 years. Mr. Richardson slid papers across the table. Filed with the state of Oregon in April 2018. Margaret Chen and Stella Chen, equal partners. Emma snatched the documents, scanning desperately. This doesn't make sense. How much could some little art gallery possibly be worth? Here it comes, I thought. The moment everything changes. Mr. Richardson delivered the line calmly. According to the most recent valuation, completed by Harrison and Associates in February, the Meridian Gallery is valued at $4.7 million. The room exploded. $4.7 million? Dad's voice cracked. That's absurd. There's no way. I don't believe this. Emma cut in, her voice rising. Mom was a housewife who played with paints. She couldn't have built a multi-million-dollar business. This has to be fraud or... I assure you everything is legally documented and verified, Mr. Richardson said calmly, pulling out more folders. The gallery has generated substantial revenue over 6 years. Current annual gross income is approximately $800,000, with a net profit margin of 32%. The business owns the building it operates from, purchased in 2019 for $1.2 million, now valued at $2.1 million. Additionally, the gallery maintains an inventory of artwork currently valued at $1.3 million, relationships with 47 represented artists, and an established client base of over 300 regular collectors. I finally spoke, my voice steady. Mom and I built something real, Dad. Something that mattered. He turned to me with desperate confusion in his eyes. You never said anything. 6 years, and you never mentioned this? You never asked what I did with my time, I replied quietly. You assumed I was failing because I wasn't following Emma's path. You assumed my art was a hobby because it didn't come with a corporate title. The truth was more complicated. Mom and I had kept the gallery quiet deliberately. We'd wanted to build something that was ours, untouched by Dad's opinions about realistic career paths or Emma's competitive need to be the successful daughter. By the time the gallery became profitable, the secrecy had become protection, a space where Mom and I could create without judgment. There's more, Mr. Richardson said. Margaret's will specifies that her 50% ownership stake transfers entirely to Stella. This makes Stella the sole owner of a business valued at $4.7 million, along with all associated assets, inventory, and real estate. Emma stood up so fast her chair hit the wall. This is insane. Dad, you need to contest this. There's no way Mom was in her right mind. She was probably manipulated. Emma, Mr. Richardson's voice carried a warning. Margaret anticipated potential challenges. She included a clause stating that any beneficiary who contests the will forfeits their inheritance entirely. If you pursue legal action, you'll lose the jewelry collection. That shut her up, but her face had gone blotchy with rage. Dad was staring at me like I was a stranger. How did you afford to buy a building? You've never had that kind of money. Mom had savings you didn't know about, I said. From her grandmother's estate, money that was hers before you married. She invested it in the gallery. We got a business loan for the rest, which we paid off in 2022. Everything was legal and documented. You paid off a business loan? Emma's voice dripped with disbelief. You, who never has money for family vacations because freelancing is unpredictable. I'd actually had money for vacations. I just hadn't wanted to spend a week listening to Emma brag while Dad nodded approvingly. But that seemed petty to mention now. Mr. Richardson cleared his throat. There are additional bequests. To Richard Chen, Margaret left her personal art collection, the paintings in the home studio, approximately 37 pieces. To Emma Chen, in addition to the jewelry, Margaret left her vintage clothing collection and her mother's china set. These were generous gifts, actually. Mom's personal paintings would probably sell for $5,000 to $10,000 each if Dad chose to. The vintage clothing and china had sentimental value Emma wouldn't appreciate. This is unacceptable, Dad said, but his voice had lost its authority. He sounded old, tired. Margaret and I were married for 35 years. How could she keep something like this from me? For the first time since Mom's funeral, I felt anger cut through my grief. How could she tell you, Dad? You've spent my entire life making it clear that art isn't a real career. You told Mom her painting was a nice hobby for a doctor's wife. You told me I was wasting my degree when I chose design over business. Why would she share something precious with someone who'd just diminish it? The words hung in the air like smoke. Emma looked shocked. I rarely raised my voice. But I was done being invisible. That's not fair, Dad said weakly. I supported your mother's interests. I built her that studio. You built her a room to keep her painting contained, I countered. You never visited the gallery. Not once. We invited you to openings, exhibitions, artist talks. Mom asked you to come see what we'd built. You always had an excuse. This was true. For 6 years, Mom had mentioned the gallery casually. Stella and I are working on a project, and Dad had nodded distractedly, never asking follow-up questions. He'd assumed it was some small hobby space, not a 3,000 square foot gallery in Portland's most prestigious art district. There's one more element, Mr. Richardson said. Stella, your mother left you a letter. She requested it be read privately, but she wanted me to share one excerpt with everyone present. He handed me an envelope with Mom's handwriting. For Stella, read when you're ready. Then he pulled out a single sheet and read aloud. To my family. I know this inheritance may seem unfair or surprising, but I made these decisions with careful thought and clear purpose. Stella is the only one who saw me as a full person, not just as Richard's wife or Emma's mother. She was the only one who believed my art had value beyond decoration. Together, we built something I'm deeply proud of, a space where artists are respected, where creativity is valued as real work, where beauty and commerce can coexist. Stella earned this inheritance through 6 years of partnership, dedication, and unwavering faith in what we were building. She earned it through every Tuesday evening helping me hang exhibitions, every Friday morning managing business aspects I struggled with, every moment she chose to invest in our shared dream. This is not favoritism, this is recognition. The silence felt different than before. Emma was crying angry tears she wiped away roughly. Dad was staring at the table, his jaw working. I held Mom's letter carefully, feeling the weight of her final message. We'd discussed this day one evening in the gallery's back office, surrounded by inventory sheets and artist contracts. Mom had been pragmatic about her illness even before the diagnosis. I'm going to make sure you're protected, she'd said that night. Your father loves you, but he doesn't understand you. Emma resents you, though she'd never admit it. When I'm gone, they'll try to take this from you, or diminish it, or make you feel like you don't deserve it. So I'm making sure legally you're untouchable. I'd protested then, not wanting to think about a world without her. Now I was grateful for her foresight. I'd like to see proof, Emma said finally, her voice steadier. Financial records, tax returns, documentation showing this gallery is actually worth what you're claiming. Mr. Richardson nodded, expecting this. I have comprehensive documentation prepared. He pulled out a massive binder. 6 years of tax returns, quarterly financial statements, the commercial appraisal, business loan records showing complete repayment, property deeds, business licenses, and letters from the gallery's accountant verifying all valuations. He slid the binder to Emma, who immediately began flipping through pages, her expression growing more distressed with each document. I knew what she was seeing, profit and loss statements showing steady growth, tax returns reporting substantial income, loan payment records demonstrating financial responsibility I'd supposedly never possessed. Dad took the binder and reviewed it silently. After several minutes, he looked up. The building was purchased for $1.2 million in 2019. Where did that money come from? Mom's inheritance from her grandmother was $400,000, I explained. We used that as a down payment. We got a commercial loan for the rest, personally guaranteed by both of us. We paid it off in 3 years because the gallery exceeded our revenue projections. You exceeded projections, Dad repeated numbly, as if these words couldn't possibly apply to his disappointing daughter. Stella has excellent business sense, Mr. Richardson interjected. Margaret told me repeatedly that while she provided the artistic vision, Stella managed the financial operations, marketing, and strategic planning. The gallery's success is as much Stella's achievement as Margaret's. Emma snapped the binder shut. So that's it? Stella gets millions, and I get some jewelry and old clothes? You also have your career, I said quietly. Your 6-figure salary, your stock options, your downtown condo that Dad helped you buy. You have everything you've always wanted, Emma. I never competed with you for those things. Because you couldn't, she shot back. You didn't have the drive or the… Emma. Dad's voice was sharp. He was still looking at the financial documents, his expression unreadable. That's enough. We sat in uncomfortable silence. Mr. Richardson organized his papers, preparing to conclude the meeting. Finally, Dad spoke. I need to understand something, Stella. Why didn't you tell me? Why keep it secret for 6 years? I'd been expecting this question. Do you remember when I graduated from design school? You told me I'd wasted 4 years and $80,000 on a useless degree. You said I should have studied business or finance, something practical. I was trying to help you be realistic. You were telling me I'd made a mistake, I interrupted. And maybe I was sensitive, maybe I took it too personally. But that moment taught me that you'd already decided who I was and what I was capable of. So when Mom and I started planning the gallery, we decided to keep it between us. We wanted to build something that was ours, free from judgment. And you succeeded, Mr. Richardson added. The Meridian Gallery has an excellent reputation in Portland's art community. It's an impressive achievement. Dad looked at me like he was trying to reconcile the daughter he thought he knew with this new information. I never knew you wanted business success. I was ambitious about different things than Emma, I said simply. You never considered that possibility. The meeting concluded shortly after. Mr. Richardson provided copies of relevant documents and scheduled follow-up appointments. As we filed out, Emma pushed past me without speaking, her heels clicking angrily on marble floors. Dad paused at the elevator. Stella, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, I replied. Mom left me the gallery because we built it together, because I was her partner in the truest sense. This isn't about you or Emma. It's about recognizing what Mom and I created. He nodded slowly, looking older than I'd ever seen him. I loved your mother. I know you did. But love and respect aren't always the same thing. The elevator arrived, and he stepped in alone. I watched the doors close, feeling the weight of everything that had just happened. My phone buzzed. A text from James, the gallery's operations manager. How did it go? I'd told James and our small staff about the meeting, wanting them to know ownership would officially transfer to me alone. They'd been worried about instability, about whether I'd continue running the gallery without Mom. It went exactly as Mom predicted, I texted back. I'll be there in an hour. Because that was the thing, life continued. The gallery had 3 exhibitions scheduled, 2 artist residencies to coordinate, and a waiting list of emerging artists hoping to be represented. Mom's death had left a hole in the gallery's heart, but the business we'd built was strong enough to survive. I drove to the Pearl District, parking behind the gallery. The neighborhood had transformed over the past decade, becoming Portland's premier arts district, and our location, secured before the area exploded, had been one of Mom's smartest decisions. The gallery looked beautiful in the afternoon light, its large windows displaying our current exhibition by a young indigenous artist named Kai Martinez. Mom had discovered Kai at a student show 2 years ago. This exhibition was dedicated to her memory. Inside, James was adjusting lighting. He looked up when I entered, his expression carefully neutral. So, he asked. I'm the sole owner of a $4.7 million business, I said. My family had no idea the gallery existed at this scale. Emma nearly had a breakdown. James whistled low. How do you feel? How did I feel? Vindicated. Sad that Mom wasn't here to see their shock. Angry that it had taken her death for Dad and Emma to realize I was capable. Grateful for 6 years of partnership with the woman who believed in me when no one else did. I feel like I need to make sure this place thrives, I said finally. That's the best way to honor what Mom and I built. Over the next few weeks, reality settled in. Dad came by the gallery once, walking through silently, studying the space Mom had poured her heart into. He paused in front of a painting Mom had created during her last months, an abstract piece full of light and color. She was talented, he said quietly. I always knew that, I just didn't realize it could be this. He gestured around the gallery. It's not just about talent, I said. It's about vision and business sense and connecting artists with people who value their work. Mom understood that art could be both meaningful and profitable. Dad nodded, still studying Mom's painting. I was wrong about you, he said abruptly. About your choices, your career. I thought I was preparing you for reality. But you found your own path, and it was more successful than anything I imagined. It was the closest to an apology I'd likely get, and I accepted it. Emma took longer. 6 weeks after the will reading, she appeared at the gallery on a Friday afternoon, looking uncomfortable in jeans and a casual sweater. I'd never seen her in anything but business attire. "Hi," she said awkwardly from the doorway. "Hi," I replied. She sat in the chair across from my desk. "I've been thinking about what happened. About how I reacted." I waited, giving her space. "I was shocked," she said. "And embarrassed. I'd spent so long thinking I was the successful sister. And then I find out you'd been running a multi-million-dollar business the whole time, and I'd been completely clueless." "It wasn't about you," I said. "I know, but it felt like it was. Like Mom chose you over me." I shook my head. "Emma, you were Dad's favorite. You always have been. Mom and I had our thing, you and Dad had yours. It wasn't a competition, wasn't it though?" Emma's voice was quiet. "We've been competing our whole lives." She wasn't wrong. Our family dynamics had been complicated, each of us jockeying for position. Emma the ambitious one, me the creative disappointment. Those roles had shaped us both. "Mom left you the gallery because you built it with her," Emma continued. "Because you shared something real. I get that now. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was something." "Do you want to see the books?" I asked. "Maybe it would help to understand how the business actually works." Emma nodded. "Yeah, I think it would." So I showed her. We spent 2 hours going through 6 years of financial records, and I watched her perception shift as she understood the reality of what Mom and I had built. The careful inventory curation, the relationships with collectors that took years to develop, the calculated risks that had paid off. "You're actually good at this," she said, sounding surprised. "The business side. I always thought you were just creative." "Creativity and business sense aren't mutually exclusive," I said. "The best galleries understand both." Emma left shortly after, but something had shifted between us. We weren't suddenly best friends, but the acute resentment had softened. 6 months after Mom's death, the gallery hosted a memorial exhibition featuring her personal paintings, the pieces Dad had inherited and loaned to us for the show. The opening was packed with collectors, artists, and community members who'd known and loved Mom. Dad came, standing awkwardly while art people swirled around him. Emma came too, bringing her fiancé. I gave a short speech about Mom's vision, her belief that art could transform communities. As I spoke, looking at the crowd gathered to celebrate her legacy, I realized something. The inheritance wasn't really about the money. It was about Mom telling me, one final time, that she saw me. That she recognized my contributions, my worth. It was her way of making sure that even after she was gone, I would know I mattered. The gallery continued to thrive. We expanded our artist roster, increased our community programming, and became known as one of the Pacific Northwest premier contemporary art venues. Every decision I made, I thought about what Mom would have wanted. And sometimes, walking through the gallery late at night, I'd pass by one of Mom's paintings and feel her presence. Not in a ghostly way, but in the way that people we love leave imprints on spaces they inhabited. The Meridian Gallery was our shared creation, our joint legacy, proof that we'd built something beautiful and lasting. My family eventually accepted the new reality. Dad started attending exhibition openings, trying to understand the world Mom and I had been part of. Emma stopped making comments about playing with colors, and occasionally asked for my advice on investments. We weren't perfect, but we were more honest than we'd ever been. Because that's what Mom's inheritance really gave me, not just financial security, but the truth. The truth about who I was, what I was capable of, and what I'd achieved. For 30 years, I'd been invisible in my family, dismissed as the artistic dreamer who'd never amount to much. Mom's will forced them to see me clearly, to recognize that I'd been building an empire while they assumed I was struggling. And in the end, that recognition, that moment when the lawyer read the valuation and my family's assumptions shattered, was worth more than any dollar amount. It was the moment I stopped being invisible and became undeniable.